Seamus Blake, how are you doing?
I'm good. I'm good. Thank you, man. Thank you.
Yeah. Yeah. So we were pre-roll. We were discussing how we met, and so I was a student at Western Michigan University. I was doing my undergraduate degree there, and I was in my third year there. Because the third year is when Trent Keniston, and I interviewed him on this program also, uh, did a sabbatical, and part of his sabbatical was um, uh, was very cool because he brought in to teach his students Chris Potter, Walt Weiskopf, and Seamus Blake.
Uh-huh.
And so I got a lesson with you, which was very cool, and I got to play with you, and it was very cool. And I've been following your career ever since. You're a terrific player, great composer, and you know, educator, great ambassador for the music. One of the things that I've checked out recently of yours is these um, written out solos.
Oh yeah, I only published one of them, but
Yeah.
yeah. Cool, cool.
And one of my good buddies, um, I know that he downloaded it, purchased it from you.
Mm-hmm.
Um, his name is Brian Olszewski,
Oh yeah.
and
Okay.
yeah, and Brian is I interviewed him also. He's a really good friend of mine. We both live in Columbus, um,
Okay.
and he's great. Great player, good dude, and so I started checking those out. Actually, I saw him before he told me about it, but
Okay.
that made me take more notice. And those are. I mean, that one solo that I heard that was really super super killing.
Thank you.
Uh,
Thank you.
and one other thing uh, was let's see here. Uh, so I'm the director of jazz studies at Ohio State,
Okay.
and we've got a faculty group called the Ohio Jazz Tet, and uh, we've been playing one of your tunes.
Oh.
So one of your tunes, "Fear of Roaming."
Oh, okay. Uh-huh.
Yeah, it's a great tune. I
Thank
really
you, man.
I really dig that. Yeah.
Thank you. Thanks so much.
So how have you been doing? Tell me how things have been going.
I've been okay. I mean, the pandemic, has been a weird year for everyone, not just musicians, but certainly the music business suffered a lot. But I'm just making the best of it. I I I often don't really mind like having time off and not gigging because it gives me the chance to kind of get into projects and do things that I ordinarily wouldn't have time to do. And I still have had a little bit of like some like overdub kind of work and some online teaching and stuff like that. I took a job recently. I'm in Italy right now. I'm in Florence right now, and I took a job in the Siena Jazz University. Siena is about an hour south of here, and I'm doing I'm teaching ensembles there. So teaching kind of repertoire and ensembles. And we just did like three classes, and then it got worse, and we had to forego the. They were doing some online teaching, like some private students, but the ensembles they decided not to. They just decided to postpone it. So we'll pick it up hopefully in the new year, maybe in January. I think is the plan. I mean, the numbers are going down, so things are kind of relatively positive, I think. Um, so I've been just kind of trying to take advantage of that and organize my studio a little bit. I mean, I just kind of moved here, so I've only been here about month and a half now, or something like that. Um, uh, and But I mean, the city is pretty closed down at the moment, but I've been enjoying it. There's some musicians here that I've been playing with. I'm kind of trying to work on doing some live streams from my apartment. Just like some sax and piano. There's a fantastic pianist who was actually a student of mine like 10 years ago, and he just happens to live like 5 or 6 minutes away from here. So we're gonna do some. I posted one on Instagram of us playing together, playing duo. We're just he's a really great player and a new friend. So I'm trying to. I got some new equipment. Like well, it wasn't working just now. I'm using the, but I have this like. I probably have to just restart the computer from fresh and have everything plugged in. Sometimes. But I got some new equipment, so I'm looking forward to like trying to do some more, a little bit more multi-camera, like teaching, streaming. Um, I also have some, some new EWI electronic wind instrument stuff. I have a new synthesizer that I really enjoy the response from it, and like a looper. I've been like trying to hook up the looper to Ableton and synchronize the looper with Ableton. That's really fun. I
Yeah.
just sort of got that going. So it's like, wow, like making loops and like having everything in synchronized is pretty fun. So yeah, like keeping myself busy with projects like that and just kind of making the most of it.
Yeah, so it sounds like you're into all of the toys.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I don't know if I have as many as you. You seem to have like a lot of stuff there. It's like, wow. You guys see like
It's a
some
problem.
electronic drums, and you have like basses and guitars, and like how many like computers you have? Like you have like, I see like three monitors behind you or something. Is that like, do you normally turn around and that's like your work, or I'm not? Yeah, it looks like a really intense studio.
So it is my studio. There are 3 computers in here.
Mm-hmm.
So now you can't see in this angle, you can't see one of the monitors that's
Mm, okay.
plugged into the computer where you see Kurt Rosenwinkel is talking back there from
Oh yeah.
um, yeah, a couple weeks ago. That
Awesome.
but you can't see the other monitor, which is over here.
Oh,
And
okay.
then then of course you can see this computer,
Yeah.
and then there's the main computer, which is another laptop. It's a MacBook
Okay.
Pro that's over here,
Amazing.
that I have got all the other stuff plugged into, and I've got some controllers and things. It's actually a problem because I I like a lot of shiny toys.
Right. Right.
Um, and it's an interesting thing because musicians, it's like boys are into toys, right?
Yeah.
And as a musician, you I mean, you're the toys change what the toys are, but it's still toys, right?
Right.
And
Right.
so it's one of the one of the career paths that you can still kind of hold on to that, you know, childlike.
Yes. Musicians are kind of like childlike. I mean, it's definitely true. I mean, it also, even just with I mean, I think creative people in general hold on to a certain kind of child energy and kind of attitude. Like when you're creative, you have to have that kind of no fear that children have, and also that kind of like that just kind of playfulness, that sometimes I think adults, as adults we can lose that. Sometimes we get like too serious and lose that playful thing. And so I think musicians hold on to that because it's sort of vital for creativity.
Yep.
Yeah.
Uh, now I'm not sure which camera this is gonna be.
Okay.
All
Oh,
right,
cool.
yeah. So
All right.
this is what's in front of me, right? So there's a couple
Nice.
keyboards, and you see there's controllers and stuff,
Yeah.
and you see there's another controller over there. It's really a problem. I've got my phone here, so I got a couple
Doesn't look like a
remotes.
problem. Looks like you got it all like set up nicely. So yeah, you're in like the deep end. You look like you could be in like a submarine or like a missile silo. Like it's like NORAD. But it's fun,
And
right? It's fun. I mean, I actually been getting more stuff lately, so it's like starting to grow. I mean, I'm I have this switcher, this ATEM Mini Pro multi-camera switcher. So I'm waiting for like another camera and some stuff
right.
like that. But yeah, it's a lot of fun. Like I have like some good internet here.
Thank you so much for watching my video so far. If you'd like to support, there are several ways to do so below. Also, likes are free. Please comment, share, and subscribe. Now back to the video.
So I'm looking forward to like trying to do some streaming and just have fun with because I mean you got to make the most of
That's right.
the lockdown, So
That's
yeah.
right. That's right. Um, it is so Italy got hit pretty hard, right? At least
I mean,
early
in the
on.
beginning, it was like kind of the first outside of China. It was the first place that I think like tourists from China probably came
Right.
and started to spread it here. I heard that even Mark Turner got sick in Italy. He got COVID like in March or something before it was even like really a thing. He was
Yeah.
here. He was playing around Venice. He was around Venice somewhere, and he got sick and was kind of out for a couple of weeks. But he was okay, obviously. But yeah, like it was bad. But the numbers, the second wave, the numbers were much worse. I don't know if like the death rate was as high, but the number of infections was really high. It went up to like for Italy, it was 36,000 a day, 42,000 a day some days. Which
Oh,
was
wow.
I mean, the population, what is the population of Italy? I think it's like California or something, 60 million or
Mm.
something like that. So, it was pretty high. I mean, this area is now a red zone and it's pretty much totally shut down. Um, so, there's not a whole lot to do. um, but you can still grocery shop and get some basic things. But yeah, I just kind of stay at home basically. Yeah.
And by the way, your 60 million was like exactly right.
Oh, really? Oh,
Yeah,
okay.
60.36 million.
Oh, wow. Damn, I was off by 0.36.
That's right. Yeah, you're slipping, man.
I was lipping. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
um, what was I going to say? It's this
Should I
virus
put
is
on a little more light? Do you? It's a little dark, right? My image, or is it okay?
I think it's all right.
Okay, good.
I think it's all right because I'm pretty dark in
Okay.
here. I mean, you can see me and stuff, but the other stuff is pretty dark when
It
we.
just looked kind of bad in the just what I see here, but if you think it's okay, because I have
I
a
mean,
little
you
overhead
could
light.
try it. You could try
Okay.
it. Yeah. Where'd you go? No.
Yeah, right.
Who's this other person? No. Uh, yeah, no. So yeah, this pandemic has been, as you said, you try to take it as an opportunity, and the virus itself is kind of a strange thing because it's so contagious. I
Hmm.
mean, it's basically like a really strong flu in terms of how it affects people, but the way that you get infected is so, I mean, it's just so crazily, I mean, aerosolation and all of that,
Yeah.
and then the sort of implications that has for, you know, playing saxophone, for instance,
Yeah,
like
yeah.
band,
I
right?
mean, you could
So
be
they
a
have
super spreader if you had it and you like went to a gig and you start
these.
I mean, I'm definitely like a spitty player, and so like it's like there's like projectile saliva, just like
Right, you get that kind of spittle or whatever that's,
sprinkler. Yeah.
yeah.
But yeah,
uh,
it's I mean, it's funny too because I did a couple of days of teaching in the ensembles, and I was a little bit nervous about being around a whole bunch of people in a like a closed space. I mean, everyone was wearing masks, but and I was thinking, well, I'm gonna play. I want to play. I don't get a chance to play, so I may as well play with the students. It's like I don't get to play ever, so I'm like, okay, well, yeah, but you can't really wear a mask and play saxophone, so I'm like, well, I guess if I get it, I get it, But I just kind of want to teach and play and enjoy it. So, But I've been fine actually. I mean, in some ways, the fact that it's a pandemic and wearing this mask all the time, I feel like I normally, like almost every year, I get like a little cold or something. But I haven't had a cold this year, so
Mm.
So maybe the mask wearing is kind of, there's also a good side to that, that you kind of, you're maybe a little more protected than pre-pandemic. I never wear masks. Asian people wear masks all the time, and like, like in the West we kind of make fun of them, like, oh, they're such germaphobes or whatever. But the reality is that it actually cuts down on, on contagion. So
Especially if everybody is wearing them.
yeah, yeah.
It's interesting because there's some different research uh, on that topic, and really to get the full benefit of it, you'd have to everybody would have to be wearing those. What is it?
The surgical ones, the N15 or the some
Yeah, yeah,
number
yeah,
like
yeah,
that.
yeah.
Yeah,
Right. So everybody would have to wear that, one of those.
95. Yeah.
And bare minimum, if you're wearing a cloth one, you'd have to wash it in an industrial uh, washing
Mm-hmm.
machine for it to theoretically actually get rid of all of whatever the contagion would be.
Right.
And you know that most people are not doing that. Probably most
Right.
people are using the same mask and probably are not washing it, right?
Yeah.
And so then it's almost you you wonder how much they could be unwittingly actually spreading it because they have some on their mask
Right.
as a that kind of thing. But
Yeah.
I think you made a good point about um you know people maybe because of this thing, people kind of maybe more respecting each other's space, washing their hands, wearing masks, and how that's probably going to cut down on the number of flu cases and
Common
and then that
cold. Yeah. Yeah.
right colds
Yeah.
in case of flus, there's a number of folks that die from the flu every year.
Yeah.
Maybe we end up cutting that number down.
Right. 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 Yeah.
So
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
yeah.
It was bound to happen, though. I mean, I think there was people talking about. There was a guy giving a TED talk or something in 2016. Like, we got to get ready for the next pandemic because it's not a question of if, it's a question of when. It's sort of like earthquakes or something. It's like it's gonna happen eventually. So just but of course, we didn't really, if it's not actually happening, we're not going to really deal with it. So I guess now we know to be a little more in the future, because there'll be more of these type of things because they just mutate, and it's
Yeah.
it's but
Yeah, and that makes me wonder about how things are going to be after this thing is over,
mhm
right? So once, the numbers go down to a point where okay, you don't have to wear your mask anymore. Okay, we can start having events again,
mhm
live shows with
mhm
lots of people and everything. You I kind of wonder how eager people are going to be, to pack in big concert halls. And then if somebody starts coughing or something, like the instantaneous thought that will form in everyone's
right, yeah, yeah.
brain, you know.
Yeah. I mean, I think it'll take a little while, and I think that they'll definitely, it won't really return to the way it was. I think it's probably going to be, there is going to be like, probably people be wearing masks like for a long time, and until the numbers are just like, until it's just really gone, and the vaccines, I mean, the vaccines sound promising. They sound like they have a good, they're effective, and so it's just a matter of like distributing them and getting them out there now, and that'll take a while. But hopefully by like, I'm thinking summer next year, like maybe things can be different by then. Even spring. So
I hope so. I
yeah,
hope so. You know, uh, the the two things at the beginning of the pandemic that I missed the most, the two things were one is obviously playing, playing on the stage in front of an
Mm-hmm.
audience.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and then the second thing was going to the gym.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I think because of the way that the politics are, and in this case, this actually benefits me. In Ohio, it's a red state.
Mm-hmm.
In this case, it actually benefits me because they opened the gyms back up 2 months after the pandemic started.
Mm-hmm.
So it was the day after Memorial Day. That's when the gyms opened back up, and they've been open continuously since then.
Mm. Okay.
Um, uh, and that's been like a real. I'm a 5 days a week guy.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, that's been a real sort of stress reliever, stress reducer, um, and that's really helped. But they have to follow all these mandates and regular cleaning, and they reduce
Right.
the number of people that can be in there, and you can't use every locker. You have to have your mask on when you're doing this, and
Mm-hmm.
you know
Mm-hmm.
um, so they put all that stuff in place. And knock on wood, uh, since Memorial Day, I resumed my training, and there's not been a single person that's called the gym and said, "Hey, I'm COVID-19 positive. Just letting you know.
Mm-hmm.
You might want to do something." So, to my knowledge, that's not occurred.
That's good. Yeah.
Um, so it seems that gyms are not I think the
Spreaders.
super spreading kind of uh, places that I think they thought they would be,
Mm-hmm. Right.
which is interesting.
Yeah. Oh, that's good. That's good to know. I didn't. I
Yeah.
haven't really been to one. I mean, I used to go more, and I guess this year because of COVID, I haven't been going. So, definitely, exercise is one of the things that I kind of let slip a little bit. I feel like I've been still enthusiastic about music. I mean, I have some moments where I'm like, oh, what's the point? But in general, like I've been pretty enthusiastic about music and strong like that. But yeah, the exercise. I mean, in the summertime, I was like going outside and stuff. But when it gets like
Mm.
worse weather and stuff, I miss the gym. So yeah, I wanna definitely get back to that. It's a good thing. It's good for
And you were
the
s- you were s-
yeah.
you were saying that you thought that maybe Kevin Turner, no, not Kevin Turner. Kevin Turner's my
Mark
friend.
Turner.
Mark Turner. Sorry.
Mm-hmm.
Always I always conflate their names. Kevin Turner, I interviewed him also. He's a great guitar player,
Oh,
works at
okay.
Ohio State.
Oh, okay.
But Turner, the tenor player,
Yeah.
um, with the unusual Altissimo facility and control.
Yeah. Yeah.
Uh, uh, you said that he was sick or something before it
Yeah,
was a thing
apparently,
or
yeah,
something.
like before it was even like in the very, very earliest days, he was
So
sick with what he thinks
along
is
those lines, even before there was a pandemic, or maybe there were some initial reports about something in China, but like nobody knew that it was going to spread like it did. Um, so this would have been maybe January or February. They speculate that um, the virus could have been in Ohio as early as January or
uh,
something. That's what they're saying.
yeah, there's some
And
reports that it was around earlier than is what was initially thought. I read that too. Like that in Italy that it was around some months before, you know, just
so,
sort of
so
spreading really quietly and in smaller ways. But
but my son got something, and he's very hardy.
mm-hmm.
He's 7, but he got something,
Mm,
and we kept him home from school for a few days. He had a really high fever.
mm,
Um, we had to like stack medication to get his fever to go down. Um, and then he did the thing because he's a kid, right? So um, the, um, his fever starts to go down because he's medicated. So then now he's running around wild and crazy because he thinks he feels better, and then his temperature goes back
Right.
up. But I think it was for I don't about 4 days we had him out of school, and I wondered, after everything came out, I was like, that was kind of a because high fever, X, Y, and Z. It seems
Seems
like,
like COVID.
and
Yeah.
then I got something around that same time, and I'm almost never sick. I got something, and it was like I was knocked out for about 2 days. Like totally low energy. You know,
Mm-hmm.
basically just laying in bed. For
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
around the clock. But then it's like then I got over it really quickly after that. Um, so that was a kind of a strange thing, and in my mind I was like, I wonder if that was the. I mean, probably not, but
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. It
yeah,
could be. It could be.
yeah.
Yeah.
So Seamus, tell us about yourself. Tell us where you grew up and your early, uh, you know, inclination towards music, maybe some early mentors, some teachers that you had, the music, stuff that was happening around your house that facilitated a career in music, and maybe like when the light really turned on and you were like, you know what, this is what I want to do with my life.
Mm. Yeah, well, I grew up in Vancouver, Canada. My dad is Irish. My mom is Canadian. They met in London, England, and I was born there actually. But I went back to Canada with them when I was 3. So I grew up. My childhood was growing up in Canada, and it's a nice place to live. Vancouver's beautiful. It's got, beautiful nature and good quality of life. And I started playing violin when I was about 7 or 8. In the school, they had a school program, and I was playing violin there. And I was into classical music at first. That was like my first introduction to music was classical music, and I liked Bach. The solo partitas, that was like some stuff that I was really into. I couldn't really play it at that point. It was a little too technically difficult for me at age 7 or 8. But I really liked classical music. I liked the violin concertos, Mendelssohn, Brahms, those kinds of things, Tchaikovsky, Beethoven. Um, and I played in a school orchestra and stuff. At one point in school, I signed up for band class also. It was just an elective, and you had to fulfill certain electives. And it was seemed I was like, music is fun. I like music. Let me try a like band class. So I played saxophone in like a concert band, and it was a playing. I don't know what you call that kind of music, that kind of North American concert band kind of stuff. It's not really classical music. It's like sort of like a weird in between hybrid genre of music. uh, but anyway, I wasn't that into the saxophone at first. I had an alto, and I didn't really practice it so much. And I was also kind of into like acting and comedy and theater and different interests. But at a certain point, I started getting a little bit more exposure to jazz. I had like I remember my parents, my mom bought me a couple of cassettes, like a Cannonball Adderley live in San Francisco, Ben Webster King of the Tenors, and Stanley Turrentine Straight Ahead. Those are my first like 3 cassettes that and the Cannonball one especially really knocked me out because it's live, and it's just like I still listen. I mean, I still I'm really into that record. It's kind of like my Bible of of like what to feel like and sound like, just like the playing and everything is so great, and the feeling, like you hear people go, yeah, cannon, yeah, cannonball, yeah, they're just like you hear them responding to the music, and you feel that energy, like Bobby Timmons is playing piano, and it's like so much like gospel and soul mixed with the bebop. It was like this combination, which just was very infectious to me. It just got me. So that record was particularly important. Then it was kind of like little things building on each other. You know, I would go to see some live shows in Vancouver. I was lucky that there were some really great musicians there. There was a guy named Phil Dwyer who's a saxophone player. He also plays piano really well. Super talented guy, and he's from basically Nanaimo, where Diana Krall is from, and Ingrid Jensen is from. He's kind of from that part of the world too. I don't know, something in the water there. It's like something because it's a pretty small town. It's like, why did like all these musicians come from there? But he went to New York and studied with Steve Grossman right after high school, and so he would come back to Vancouver and play around town, and I would go hear him play. And so I started taking some lessons from him. I took some lessons from some other guys around town too, but he was one of the maybe one that I admired the most, and he was also a kind of a stern teacher, and he was kind of like brutally honest with me. He said, you can't really play actually. I was like, oh yeah, okay, yeah. He's like, here, let me write out a chorus of blues for you. This is basically what you want to be trying to play. This is an example. And he wrote out one chorus of F blues, kind of like style blues. And I was kind of amazed at the way he could just write it out like from his head. I was like, wow, how does he do that? How is it in his head like that? That kind of blew me away, And he said, here's an example, and he says, why don't you transcribe some Charlie Parker and come back to me for another lesson when you've done that, I was like, okay, And I liked Bird actually. I had already switched to tenor, and I found it like a little bit too difficult to transcribe. I would just like the records that I had and the pitch of it, and I couldn't quite do it, and I couldn't quite figure out how to write out the rhythms too. The rhythms, I was like, I didn't have the Omni book. I didn't have like that reference of like, oh, these are just eighth notes. Okay. Like it seemed a little bit Greek to me, like I was like, what, how do you write? Because coming from classical, I was like, an eighth note is dun, 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 So I just couldn't really quite figure out the swing thing. And then, I remember I was in Port Townsend, Washington, and then I met this guy, Jay Collins. He's a tenor player. I think he might still live in New York. I'm not sure. And he, I think he was from like, I want to say he's from like Oregon or somewhere. I'm not sure, Portland or somewhere like from Oregon. But anyway, he was transcribing this Sonny Rollins solo. And I went to the Bud Shank Jazz Workshop in Port Townsend, and it was the teachers were all the Mel Lewis quintet. So it was Mel Lewis, Dick Oates, Kenny Warner, John Mosca and trombone, and Dennis Irwin, and that was kind of like the faculty. But this guy Jay was playing this solo. It was like the first day of you just go into the dorms or where you're staying, and I was hearing this guy practice. So I introduced myself, and he showed me this solo, and he was like, yeah, I'm just really into this Sonny solo. And I was really impressed because he kind of was writing it out. It looked kind of easy. It was just like eighth notes, and he really sounded like he really had the sound. I was like, wow, you've got the sound. Like, how do you do that? And so that inspired me. I think later that summer I did my first Sonny Rollins solo, and I wrote out Olio, and I guess I was just ready for it at that time, and I picked something that was easy enough that I could kind of do it. It was not a very long solo. He leaves lots of space, and I was always curious about like rhythm changes. I was like, it seems like I never really know what the chords are, and like how do you make lines over this like progression that seems to be always kind of changing, and it's like so many variations, and I just have no idea what's going on. So that was like kind of and I really wanted to sound good on rhythm changes because like, every jam, I loved jam sessions, and like at every jam session, everyone played Olio or Rhythmaning, one of those two. And so I was like, yeah, if I can just get some rhythm changes, if I could sound good on rhythm changes, then maybe, like I'll like sound good at the jam and it'll be really fun. So it was like something I like, was inspired for. And I meant with succeeding with the solo and like kind of starting to absorb that language gave me wings, and then I got really excited about doing that. So I started. The next solo I did was also on Oleo, and it was train solo on Oleo from the Relax and the Miles quintet stuff. And I just I loved the lines, and I loved and just and at first it was like kind of slow because I'd have to play the note. I'd use like an old cassette machine, and I'd be listening to the notes and try to find the notes on my saxophone. But then gradually it got quicker, it got faster, and sometimes I could just write out whole passages without checking the notes, and so I didn't realize it, but I was kind of training my ear at the same time and kind of learning language, and so that was like kind of my thing, and I did that for a while. I got kind of addicted to that, and I started like transcribing lots of different kinds of solos of people. I remember doing some Bob Berg. I was really into Bob Berg from like the 70s, with Cedar Walton Trio and Bob Berg. I liked that stuff. I liked also, I would start to, just basically learning solos and stuff. And then I went to Berkeley, and I guess I had been obsessed enough, and I had gotten it together enough that I could be at a basic level that I could kind of I could play at jam sessions. So I remember the first jam session at Berkeley was Jeff Keezer, Roy Hargrove, Dwayne Burno, I think Masa, this Japanese drummer, I forget his last name, Masahiko, I forget his last name, Kurt Rosenwinkel, Mark Turner. It was like Antonio Hart, I think, was there. It was amazing, though. I mean, Berkeley was. I felt like I went to that was a great place to be at that time, because those were like some of the some of the stars of tomorrow, or the stars of the future stars, and great jam sessions, and like just playing with Roy and playing with Jeff Keezer and playing with Kurt and these people was really taught me a lot and was really inspiring. So I went to Berkeley, and I a lot of those guys left. They only went for like a couple of years. Once they got a taste of it, they were like, I'm just going to go to New York. But for me, being Canadian, I stayed because it was a chance to stay in the country longer and keep playing, keep developing. And so after school, I went to New York, and then I lived in New York from 1993 until three years ago or something. I left, and I loved New York, and I had a great run there. After a while, I just felt like I needed a change or something. I kind of wanted to I kind of got tired of the quality of life that I had in Brooklyn, and I think New York is it's an amazing city, and it was I don't regret ever being there, and there's things I miss about it a lot too. But being in Europe, I felt like my quality of life was just like better, and I liked being in like kind of a more beautiful, more mellow place that and I could still have actually moving to Europe. I had like lots of work. I had more work even, because a lot of musicians from New York go to Europe a lot to play, So just being in Europe, I had actually access to maybe just like one-off gigs that if you lived in New York, you couldn't do that because the flight would be too cost prohibitive. But if you actually just live in Europe, you can just fly for one gig to go fly to Germany, let's say, and go play one concert in Munich, and then fly home, So those kinds of things were more possible. So, and there was, quite a few expats, and some, Greg Hutchinson is in Rome. There's Joe Sanders is in Paris. I was seeing, meeting up and seeing some musicians that I had known from New York. So I didn't feel so I didn't feel so that I had didn't feel so bad that I had left all the good musicians behind, because there's actually a lot of really amazing musicians in Europe too.
And from what I hear and understand, like the healthcare situation is a lot better for musicians in Europe than it is in the States.
Yeah. I mean, health. I mean, the states has unfortunately some of the like it's like the worst healthcare unless you like have the money for like insurance and all that kind of stuff. It's bad. So as a musician, I mean, to pay, I mean, basically, I mean, it's different in every country in Europe, and every country has their own kind of, and some countries are more expensive. Um,
Mhm.
but, um, yeah, Italy, France, the countries that I lived in anyway, the healthcare it's basically like universal healthcare. So you just sign up, and if you're a citizen, I mean, even if you're not even a citizen, you still get treated. You know.
Right. So um, I I interviewed Jay Metcalf, and uh, we talked because he lives in France,
Oh, okay.
and we talked about his his situation with insurance and everything, and he lived in New York before he moved to France,
Mm-hmm.
and what you have to do as a musician in New York and honestly just everywhere in the states basically
Mm-hmm.
is you have to do like a ton of stuff. You have to cobble a lot of stuff together. I always tell my students, you got to do some playing, some performing, some teaching, and I got that talking point from Walt Weiskopf. Um, and uh, but those are the sort of musicianship things that you have to be able to do. I would add to that, um, to the composing, the writing component is you have to have some technology chops. So you need to be able to record yourself, and then now you have to have some video, capability. You have to, I mean, you have to embrace that stuff. So basic understanding of programs like Logic and Ableton Live and that stuff. I mean, it's like, it's kind of, that's you. I mean, if you're going to if you're going to make a living, and especially in light of what can happen, like a pandemic, you don't know when that's going to happen. You have to have these skills together. But in addition to that, it's like you got to have, okay, I got my freelance thing happening, I got my academic thing happening. So, I'm working for an institution, you know, then I got church gigs, I got that happening. And it's like you have to do a lot of this stuff. And Jay, he's a really good saxophone tech, right? So he was, repairing stuff. And so that was his hustle too. And you get to the point where you have to decide, well, am I going to pay for insurance or am I going to eat this month? And, eating seems like a more immediate need.
Sure.
So you have
Yeah,
to,
the insurance
sometimes
is
you choose that.
expensive. Yeah, it's expensive.
Right.
It's like
Very.
as much as rent. So
Yeah. It's very, very expensive. I'm fortunate because, my position at Ohio State, and I have really good insurance, but,
mhm.
you know, it's not necessarily the case for a lot of freelance musicians that
Yeah.
they would have to dig in their own pocket to pay for the insurance.
Hmm.
Um, so yeah,
That's true.
I
Yeah.
would, it does seem like there can be something. Now, one thing about American insurance is that um, it does facilitate a lot of breakthroughs in science, right? So you have a lot of the cutting edge stuff that gets developed first in the states, but then it's so expensive, and then unless you're like wealthy, you probably
Hmm.
can't afford it. So,
Hmm.
so then you have to kind of weigh that benefit against how many people can actually access that.
Hmm.
Um, and then of course the minus side, especially for someone that's like in a freelance kind of job, their career path, uh, you know, how are you going to how are you going to afford this super expensive procedure that maybe you need to save your life, and you're not related, you don't have a job at an institution where that insurance is part of your job, part of
Hmm.
what your job pays. So it's yeah, it's kind of funky. I would, I hope that we can figure that thing out, get that thing solved. It seems like there's a solution that would satisfy most interests.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I mean, it seems that there's this kind of like really strong. There's a segment of the population which is so anti-socialist. Like anything that is like kind of helping the greater good is like too socialist for like this like large swath of the population in the states. So it's like it's a fight. It's like the way that politics are so so polarized like that. It's difficult, and Obama really I mean, he was trying with the Obamacare, and we'll see what happens. I mean, yeah, I think it is sadly one of the points that one of the most crucial things that needs fixing, because almost every other country in the world, even much poorer countries, are able to get that a little more together, like basic health care for people, um, especially with the insurance thing, like something like the way that you can have like you can get like you can be crossing the street and get hit by a car or something, and then you get like this hospital bill of like $40,000 or something like that kind of stuff, but
Yeah.
anyway, I mean that wasn't necessarily why I left. It wasn't just healthcare. I mean, yeah, that's one thing that I do like about Europe and that, but it's for me. I think it was like I would just. I mean, I had always been over to Europe so much, and I felt like it would be like a kind of a like an adventure, you know, a nice adventure, and a kind of like a different chapter, and a kind of also like I thought I'd like to live somewhere maybe that's just not like a super urban place, and
Man, I have to tell you, man, my taste in music is definitely East Coast.
mm-hmm,
Bebop, really aggressive, like in your face.
mm-hmm,
You know, Sonny Rollins, yes,
mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Yeah, 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 yeah,
it's really it's all of that, right?
yeah, uh-huh,
But the lifestyle that I would prefer is far more West Coast, or in my
yeah,
case, I grew up Midwest, and I feel
right,
like you get a good sort of mix of those sort of polarities.
mm-hmm,
Um,
mm-hmm,
I mean, the house that I live in, where I live, if I wanted to live in New York like this, I'd have to make probably 20 times the amount of money that I make.
yeah, yeah,
Y-
yeah,
and then let alone the fact that it's going to be concrete, the concrete jungle, right? It's going to be
mm-hmm,
concrete instead of grass, you know,
right, right, right,
stuff. And I think I prefer grass.
yeah. For sure, sure, yeah, yeah. I kind of just got tired of like. I mean, it's a double-edged sword. I definitely miss a lot of. I miss a lot of friends. I miss people that I left behind. But I thought, I mean, at this point in my life, I think I want to like. I can still play a lot, and I can still travel, and I can still tour, and I can still do all those things. But when I come home, maybe I don't want to like. I just didn't want to grow old in Brooklyn. Just living in Brooklyn. A lot of people like they go upstate. A lot of people like do that. They go upstate and they get out of the city. Hudson Valley kind of area. That was possible, but I guess just for whatever reason, I decided to go to Europe.
All right. And so uh what about music uh turned you on? What is it about music? What aspects of music do you enjoy the most? And when did you know, like, okay, this is definitely when I knew that this is what I wanted to do with my life?
Mm-hmm.
Maybe it was before you went to Berkeley.
I mean, yeah, I think it was kind of gradual. I would say I think maybe like my last year of high school, I was relatively obsessed
Yeah.
already with it, and so um, I guess around that age I was fairly, around age 16, 17, I was fairly
Right.
obsessed, and I think at that point I kind of was already on the road to like music, like a fully addicted, you
Right.
know. But it was lots of little things that like hearing live music, hearing good live players. I
Mhm.
was fortunate to hear some. There was a guy, that guy Phil Dwyer I told you about. He played in a band with this trombone player named Hugh Fraser, and they had like a quintet, and it was like a really nice, good, like kick-ass hard bop quintet. Like alto and tenor. Sometimes they would switch too. So sometimes he would play trombone because he played trombone and piano, and then one guy played piano and sax, and so they'd switch. But they had like kind of catchy tunes, hard bop kind of tunes, like a kind of a broad range, and like really like engaging soloists, like really like New York level, for sure. Like Phil
Right.
studied with Steve Grossman, and they were, they were like they would play like pretty memorable, engaging shows, So as a teen, just seeing that, I was like, wow, And I'd also go see, the other concerts, I remember the movie Round Midnight kind of like made an impact, like seeing the music in that movie, seeing Herbie, seeing Freddie play, seeing Dexter, that. And even though there's a dark side to that movie, the kind of like the alcohol addiction and the sort of the lonely, there was a sort of a loneliness, especially when he went back to New York, and there was like one scene where he's in a hotel and he's like, and then his estrangement with his daughter, and there was some dark things to the movie, obviously, but the music was very, I mean, I think it's one of my favorite jazz movies just because of the way that the music is portrayed, and the fact that it's kind of real music, and the personalities of the musicians, like the music is so rich in that movie. So that had a kind of an impact on me, but and then I guess I got scholarship to go to Berkeley. So the first year was kind of like free. I was like, well, I guess I'll go check it out. It sort of, it just, once you put the energy and the devotion into something, if you love it and you have the energy and you
Mm.
have the devotion, it kind of becomes its own energy, and it just kind of takes over.
Yeah.
And so that, it just kind of, I just kept rolling with it, basically, And the amazing thing about music is that it's as vast as the universe, it's so vast. And you, if you're a truly curious person and truly like open, you can stay fascinated with music for your whole life. Like there's no reason to be bored with it. Like if you're bored, that you're not looking at it through the right glasses. You're just, maybe you know you have to find, you have to be open minded and stay inspired for sure. But I mean, I feel like there's so much to do in music that like I would need several lifetimes even to do all the things that I would really love to do. So it's like you almost have to kind of, you have to pick, like what am I going to really focus on actually, But that that I think that was also what attracted me to it, like first of all, I loved the sound of the music. I felt the connection to the emotion. I remember once listening to Beethoven's Sixth Symphony just as a child, as maybe 12 years old or 10 years old or something, and closing my eyes and seeing this like whole Disney animation. I could see, it's the storm, and then after the storm, and the music really like was like full Technicolor animation. I could see that. Um, and I think like jazz. I think I initially liked classical music, but then jazz just seemed cooler because I always liked improvising. I think I was at heart.
Mm.
I don't really like to do it the same way every time. I get bored. I'm like, I mean, I get bored with people who like to do things always the same way. I'm like, don't you want to do it differently? Like, doesn't it bore you that you just did it the same way like 10 times in a row? I mean, I understand the comfort in that. Like, there's a comfort in like always being, doing it the same way. But I think I just like to I like the creativity and the it's fun to just to kind of improvise and to just I even in the orchestra I used to improvise. I would get bored playing my part, and so I would play. You'd see my bow would be going like everyone else's bow would be going the same way, but I'd be like playing some other. I don't know what I was playing, but I was just like making up some part or something. But I mean, I basically at a certain point I was like, jazz is cool. Like you can
Yeah.
you can be your own person, and like there's all these personalities, and it's very creative, and the music is cool. It's like, it just, I think I was just, the combination of all of that just seduced me, I think.
It's interesting uh, that that thing about you bowing a different way than the other players,
Yeah.
and or making parts up as you're playing.
Yeah.
Um, I use this I use this illustration to communicate to students how important rhythm is, how important feel is in jazz, that it is the absolute pinnacle. It's the top. It's the most important component, and that's not to say that harmony, melody are not important, but the whole thing is flipped upside down. The feel is much more important than the others. The others are important, but the feel is at the top.
I say that
And
to my
so
students too. Yeah.
the illustration that I, and this is why this is the it's kind of funny with your illustration about making a part up, is I say, imagine if you were a cellist and you're playing like a Brahms symphony or something, and say you're the principal player in the section, and you just decide that you're going to play all of the correct rhythms, but you're just going to pick any notes that you want to play.
Hmm.
Okay. Now, as wrong as that is, that's how wrong it is to play the right notes in jazz, but to play the wrong feel. I
Right.
always use the illustration because I think even when you insist on and lean in on how important the feel is, it seems like there's still that sort of undertone or overtone or whatever of that European, classical sort of bias and the gravitational pull that some, especially for some musicians, makes it hard for them to really be able to grasp what it is that you're saying.
Yeah.
Because in classical music, largely rhythm is a function of the or a byproduct of counterpoint, basically. That's the way that it um, tends to be treated. Now, you can talk about gestures, right? There's like a gestural thing, and that's an aspect of feel or of rhythm. But as far as being sort of down to the finest molecule, the smallest molecule, like in jazz, how important it is, it just doesn't exist. And the other thing I was going to say was you were saying about um, being bored. Yeah. If people can be bored in music, um, I don't know. I don't know how is that possible. With all of the stuff that there is, it seems to
Yeah.
me that music maybe is only second to the vastness of God
Hmm.
in 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 all of its uh
Yeah, it's incredibly vast. It's up to
yeah,
you to be to have your eyes wide open to see it, or ears open
Right.
to hear it.
Right.
I mean, I totally agree with you about the rhythm thing, and it's an interesting thing. It's an interesting topic, and I make the same stresses with my students, and it's the thing that I always notice the most. And it's, I tell this one story that I was in Barcelona one time, and I was listening to a guy play the saxophone at a club, and they were playing like James Brown funk stuff, like
Mm.
60s James Brown funk kind of band. And there was a guy playing. I walked in, the band was already playing. There was a guy playing saxophone, and I was listening. And I sat down, and I was listening, and I was thinking about it. I liked it immediately. I was like, I like it. And then I was kind of like analyzing it. I was like, well, he doesn't have a very good sound, and he's not really like playing like amazing melodies. So why do I like it? And then I was like, well, he doesn't really have like good tech. He's not playing like something technical or anything. It's very simple. It's like, and then I was like, oh, okay, the rhythm, like his rhythm is just his feel is like amazing. And so I went up to the guy and I said, hey, I enjoyed your playing. And he said, oh, hey, Seamus, oh yeah, oh man, I'm a drummer. I'm not a sax player. I'm a drummer. I just play sax for fun. And I was like, oh, okay, that makes a lot of sense now. Now because he like he wasn't like stuck in a kind of a straitjacket of feel. He was like really loose with his feel, so he could accent it one way and change another way. You know the way that like Sonny Rollins can play like the first part of his phrase. I don't know anyone else who can really do this. He can play the first half of the phrase rushing almost ahead, and then by the end of the phrase he lays back. So he has so much
No.
elasticity in his time, and it's just like
No.
but so much control over it. So I mean, I make that statement to students, like, you have to have rhythm, otherwise it's just dead in the water.
Right.
And I mean, it makes a lot of sense. I mean, jazz is, it's basically, it was this crazy fusion of classical harmony and classical music with African rhythm. That's basically what it is, right? I don't know, would you say that it's a huge overgeneralization, but the part that is important in jazz, I mean, it was originally like kind of dance music. It was like people were dancing to it. It was like rhythmic music. And I think that comes from the African part of the equation. And so you can't stress that European side, uh, and make it out of balance. And a lot of
Right.
times in education, and that the stuff that's easier to teach is like the harmony and the rules and the chord scales and the and that and stuff. And so it's just, I think one time I was in the Sibelius Academy in Finland, in Helsinki, and they have an amazing school there, incredible school, incredible facilities, and they actually had like some courses, like it was like teaching rhythm, like just rhythm classes for jazz students, like just spending the whole class. They would have to tap out polyrhythms. They'd have to like do exercises. They'd have to like kind of really focusing on rhythm and studying rhythm with the exclusion of other aspects. And I thought, wow, that's kind of interesting, because not a lot of jazz courses that I've seen at other places do stuff like that.
Yeah, the the rhythm thing. Uh, so one of the things, like you were talking about, the combination of European classical music and African rhythm,
Mm-hmm.
and that is kind of a simplification, but I think that's the way it usually gets contextualized. It makes
Mm-hmm.
it's clear. Um, one of the things about that, just pulling out a couple things. One of the things is the African conception of music is in no way really separated from the conception of dance. So dance and rhythm and music, it's all the same thing, right? So
Mm-hmm.
rhythm is I suppose you could treat it like an intellectual construct, but the way that it is expressed is bodily, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's a feel. When we talk, we're saying feel.
Mm-hmm.
We're not saying um, we're not talking about the appropriate um, places to play notes within a measure that has a certain number of beats in it. That I mean, you can talk about it that way, but that's not what we're saying. We're saying feel,
Feel is
right?
more like, is the difference between, it's like the difference between, putting a bunch of notes quantized in a computer and listening back to that perfectly quantized thing, and then having the somebody come along and like play it in with so that they're like laying back on certain notes are laid back, and then maybe some
Yeah,
things are slightly on top, and it creates this kind of dynamicism, this there's a little more tension, things are pushing and pulling against one another. And so when you listen to like where Jay Dilla puts his snare, or
oh
where
goodness,
where certain drummers are. I like this example. There's Elvin Jones fill on right at the beginning, just before the solos. It's like he pulls it. He's like, there's like, it's
yeah,
really amazing because he only has like a couple of beats, but he like, it's like he pulls the rug back on the whole band. He's like, go back, band. I think Wayne
yeah,
is kind of
yeah,
right.
yeah,
It's like he's pulling back for emphasis. So that's feel. That's not like quantized stuff. Like rhythm
yeah.
is not just in the pocket. I mean, not pocket, but rhythm is not just like 16th notes and eighth notes and all this kind of quantized the mathematical subdivisions. It's actually where you put it.
Right, right. In to the point of the mathematical thing, it's not like players said, "Okay, I wanted to develop something that I'm going to call metric modulation, and the way I'm going to do that is by taking triplets but grouping them in twos and fours.
Mm-hmm.
Here we go."
Mm-hmm.
That's, I mean, that's a,
Intellectualization. Yeah.
yeah, and maybe that's a way that you have to teach it,
Mm-hmm.
because I mean, what kind of teacher is going to say, "Hey, you'll hear it, you'll feel it, you got it,
Mm-hmm.
just play it a couple more times."
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, you have to have a way to talk about it, but
Mm-hmm.
that is far different from the way that things actually naturally developed over time.
Mm-hmm.
So you're talking about laying back or playing on top of the beat. I think that's likely the way that players started to discover some of these other divisions. If you lean back
Mm-hmm.
far enough, you can find sort of another, you know,
Mm-hmm.
it's like you can lay back into a certain gear, and you
Mm-hmm.
can lay back further into another gear, and you can,
Mm-hmm.
and by the way, organically, by the way that it feels, you can start to sort of subconsciously calculate how many notes you need to land where you need to land.
Mm-hmm.
And all of that stuff is, that's all feel. That's not we're not talking math here.
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. I mean, I think, in African music, there's a tremendous amount of polyrhythmic stuff that's going on, and I think a lot of times the musicians that are playing it are not having this like, it's not an intellectualization.
No.
It's not. It's a very natural. It's more like a kind of like fun voodoo party where people are just these things are happening like in a really natural kind of way. And yeah, I mean, I think polyrhythm, which is it's built into the jazz beat. I mean,
Hmm.
jazz rhythm, the swing pattern is basically like 12/8, which is kind of like African music. It's like an African groove, so there's polyrhythm built into that, like
No.
3 and 2 and 3, and it's 2 and 3 are incredible. Like it's like you can just get lost in that all day long. And
Yeah,
I remember
and you,
transcribing this during the pandemic. I was like, um, I was into this. There's a live OTB record live at Mount Fuji, and there's one part where Ralph Peterson and the pianist Harry Pickens they get into this polyrhythm, and it's behind the tenor solo, and I was like, "What is that?" It's like just so amazing. So I had to like try to figure it out, and it actually took me a while to kind of figure it out. But it's basically like it's a kind of a like a hemiola three against four type of thing. But it just sounds so great, and it's so exciting. And they do it actually for they do it for almost a full chorus. So that like,
mm,
and then they release, and
yeah,
the release that is so exciting. But yeah, those kind of those kinds of even simple things. I thought it was like something more complicated or something, but and it is kind of in a way. What's complicated about it is is that you start to hear the other rhythm. You start like when the polyrhythm starts, you get lost and you start hearing the other one. So it's almost like an
yeah,
optical illusion or something. So then
yep,
you're like, whoa, wait a minute, wait, I thought I was here, but now I'm here. And then
mm,
but then what to me is really amazing with polyrhythm is when you release and when you're like
yeah.
bam and you come back
Yeah.
together, and that's when people are like, oh my god, that's when it's like the excitement is over the
But
top
well,
then.
so something that's interesting, and there's a modern parallel to that. Um, it's a drop. When the beat drops, right? So,
Hmm.
in like
Hmm.
techno music,
Technical music.
like and techno, right, techno music, in techno and like dubstep,
Uh-huh.
there is in over a process of time you start to hear all this stuff happening,
Building
and it's
tension.
getting more intense, and then
Hmm.
bang,
Bam.
and then
Yeah, the drop. Yeah, yeah.
it's the same kind of
The release
concept.
of tension. Yeah.
Yeah, I call
Hmm.
that um I usually refer that as being rhythmic suspension.
Hmm.
So we're very familiar with harmonic suspension, and we
Hmm.
know what that feels like when you get that, four, no, finally it goes to three, you
Hmm.
know,
Hmm.
that thing, or
Tension and
when,
release. Yeah.
right,
Yeah.
but it's just the rhythmic
A
counterpart.
rhythmic version
Um,
of it. Yeah.
yeah, and I love, for instance, maybe one of the most ubiquitous versions of this in jazz.
Uh-huh.
Like if you're listening to Train and he's playing in two, the rhythm section keeps playing in two, and he's playing all this stuff and they're playing in two, and it's like, when is it gonna
Mm-hmm.
go to four?
Yeah. 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 Yeah.
And it's like,
Yeah. Finding.
hey,
Yeah.
there it
Yeah.
is.
Yeah. Finding ways to keep tension and to build tension. It's like also like just staying with an idea, just like having that kind of focus. Um, uh, there's a Michel Petrucciani live somewhere. He's not the only person that I've heard do this. It's almost a gimmick, but he does some like he gets stuck and he starts doing this and he does it for like two choruses or something. So by the time he finally stops doing it and to go back going bam, then you're
Yeah.
like, okay, okay. So it's like it's just I mean that's a very simple version of it, but it still works. It's like wow, it's just building tension and releasing it. It doesn't have to be so obvious, but it's nice when it's maybe not, but it's definitely like a huge part of playing. It's something also that comes with the interaction. That's one of the things that the COVID thing, and that's what like live playing is so missed is that interaction and the interaction of
Yeah.
like rhythm, and so you can kind of like fake it a little bit, like I've had to do some overdubs where I'm overdubbing on and I'm like kind of listening to something that's there, and I'm kind of playing as if I'm reacting to it, and it's a little bit like artificial. I mean, I think when people started seeing all those COVID videos, they thought, oh, they're all playing together. Like, like, oh, this is great. Musicians just keep playing together. That's so wonderful, you know. But the reality is, it's all artificial. It's like overdubs, you know. And
Yeah.
and so you know, until everyone's running Jack Trip and got fiber internet, and we're all just like, you know, just
Yeah.
you know, playing live from our from our bunker. you know, have you tried that the Jack Trip stuff yet? Because you seem like
I,
fairly adept with technology, so I bet you probably have.
it's installed on my computer, but I haven't actually used it yet.
Oh, okay, okay. But you
Yeah.
kind of got it
Um,
up and running. Like, was it a technical? Like, was it a deep? I mean, as someone who looks pretty, you've got a lot of gear there. You know how to use it. Like, you're not afraid of technology, but at the same time, sometimes you know how technology is. It can go really deep, and you can be like, "Whoa, this is way too deep for me." Like, all of a sudden, you know, a DOS screen comes up, or you need to start doing command line. You know.
right.
You know, that's when I jump out. You know, it's like, whoa, okay, yeah. Um, you know,
Well,
I don't
the
feel so
way
bad because you know, you can't do everything, right? I mean, Steve Jobs couldn't even code, so I'm not going to feel so bad if I don't know code. You know.
yeah, I'm pretty nerdy. There is a level of things that I sort of tap out. I'm like, yeah, I it's just because, I don't have enough time. There's not enough
Yeah,
time to do
yeah, to
anything.
do everything. Yeah, exactly.
So I will tap out on certain things.
Yeah.
But this is actually the Jack Trip thing is actually not that difficult. It's not that and I think the interface is pretty easy to understand. I think getting it installed correctly, there's a few steps involved in that
Mm-hmm.
that can be a little challenging, but
Mm-hmm.
once you have it installed, it's not that bad.
Yeah.
Um, yeah.
Cool. Yeah.
Um,
What's the pianist that has been doing it a lot? Dan Tepfner. Do you know Dan?
no, I
Uh,
don't.
he did a live trio on Facebook with Jack Tripp. So
Oh,
Eric
okay.
Harland was playing 150 miles away, and then there was a bass player. I forget who was playing now. A guy that plays with him a lot. But they were all in separate locations. And they were playing trio live on Facebook. So I was like, wow, that's kind of a moment. Like this is these kind of things are maybe some interesting things. It's of course it's not going to replace live gigs, and we don't want it to. But it also is maybe it could have like a potentially an amazing, like if you could actually just do recording sessions with people 500 miles apart and have the latency be not.
Well, that's actually how this that developed. First, they wanted a solution, and this is before the pandemic, for
Yeah.
people that to keep the production costs low.
Mm-hmm.
So you don't have to pay to fly somebody somewhere. They basically, developed this technology to basically be able to punch people in, you know, uh, through the internet and to be
Yeah.
perfectly in sync with the playback.
Mm-hmm.
um, that's kind of was the beginning of the technology developing, and then now obviously there's additional wrinkles when you start having multiple locations, more than two locations. So you have
Mm-hmm.
like, if you have like a band of quartet or something or quintet, then the calculations get more sophisticated, probably harder to understand.
Mm-hmm.
and
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
and then it's going to also require that everyone's um, uh, their internet speed is faster, you
Yeah.
know. But yeah, um, well, I did want to give you a chance to plug anything that you want to plug. We talked a little bit about your written solo,
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm
but
working
is there
on.
anything else?
I mean, I'm gonna try to have a. I have some other ones that I haven't published, but I'm trying to some of my projects. One of my projects is to do some more masterclass type stuff, you know. So
Oh, okay.
I don't know whether I'll do the masterclass. I might do it live and then record it, and so people could, if they couldn't see it live, they could download a copy of it. And in the masterclass, I kind of want to focus on, ways to build language, creativity, ways to be creative with practicing and working on music, and not being because there's sometimes when you're trying to learn and practice, there's there's a lot of resources out there nowadays. There's a lot of people with, like, here's my etudes and here's my patterns and here's
Yeah.
my material and stuff. But for me, I think what's really important, and what sometimes is missing a little bit, is that it sounds musical, like that it because if you practice too many exercises, you play too many exercises. And so, like, I think a certain amount of, like, technical exercises and warm up things, and that's good. But if you only practice this kind of way, it could, I think that it could possibly be detrimental. And so I wanted to try to, like, do I was interested in, like, composing solos as opposed to um, always transcribing them also, because of course we can
Mm.
transcribe solos, but getting into, like, trying to find ways to talk about how you can act, because maybe there's more language inside you that you realize, and there's more. I think when you connect the creativity to music, you are more inspired too,
Mm.
um, because I remember initially when I was, like, learning solos, I was really inspired because I could find myself sounding like my idols. I was like, oh, I kind of sound a little bit like Coltrane, or a little bit like Dexter. So I got that tone, that Dexter sound. And that's really exciting. But after a while, I actually hit a wall with that, and I felt like I couldn't go forward because I needed to transcribe another solo, but it was like a kind of a drug addict mentality. I was, like, always like, I just got to do one more solo and then I'll be ready, but I was never ready. And like, I felt like I need to find some other way to, like, connect and find something else in the music. And so that was more like a process of just figuring out how to take what I know and be creative with it, and find ways to increase my language and my playing, and to find new ways of using the language that I have. Um, so I guess I'm going to try to do some. I've done a little bit of I did a couple of master classes already that were online, but I'm going to try to do them myself, and just make them available through my website. Going to try to do some live streaming. So I got, I'm just waiting for a couple more pieces of equipment, and then Amazon has been holding me up. But I got a Canon a camera coming, and then I'm going to do some duo streaming, and hopefully some solo stuff too, like some looping. I'm looking forward to doing that. So I'm still kind of, like, testing and getting getting the gear and stuff like that ready. But I'm excited to do some of that kind of stuff.
Well, I want to say again, I still think about that lesson I got with you, and opportunity to play with you, and you know, you know, I trust and hope that we'll have an opportunity to play again.
Yeah, that would be great. I would love that. I would love that. When the traveling is gets a little bit easier, I'll be back, coming back to play, and so hopefully we can work something out. I could come. You're in which city are you in? Sorry,
I'm in Columbus.
Columbus. Yeah, okay.
Yeah, yeah.
I think my good friend, Dan Reeser, the drummer. He's from
No.
Columbus, I think. He's a
Hmm.
drummer. I played in a band, the Bloom Daddies, with him, and he was at Berkeley when I was there, and he didn't do as much jazz. Like, I mean, he could play. He actually, like, he could do, like, a pretty damn he could like get into like a Jack DeJohnette vibe and like an Elvin thing. He definitely, but he ended up like doing more like playing with outside of the jazz world a little bit. But he's done some, he's played with a bunch of people. But anyway, he's from Columbus. Yeah.
I wanted to ask you also, do you know Pete Mills?
Pete Mills. I don't think so. No.
I just wondered because you're both Canadian.
Oh, okay.
Pete lives in he lives in Columbus. I interviewed him also, great tenor player.
Okay.
He works at Denison University,
Okay.
and he plays with the Columbus Jazz Orchestra. We play in that group together a lot.
Oh, great! Wow, that's great.
Byron Stripling. I
yeah.
interviewed him also. He's the artistic director of the Columbus
Okay.
Jazz Orchestra.
Yeah, I know Byron. Yeah.
And that reminds me, one thing I wanted to say about your story about the saxophone player that was really a drummer.
Yeah.
Is something that Byron says to us frequently. And he's not the only person that I've heard say this, but he says to us frequently, everybody's the rhythm section.
Yeah. It's true, right?
Everybody's there is the rhythm section, and that's
True.
the idea that in order to really play everybody to play together with good feel, everybody has to be internalizing the time and
Everyone's
not relying on someone
drummer,
else's. Yeah.
I remember there was that, when I was young, I used to hear like sort of junior musicians say, well, yeah, if I get a good rhythm section, I can sound good, but they were thinking that their playing was getting spoiled because there was a bad rhythm section. But I remember hearing Joe Henderson one time play with the Harvard Jazz Big Band, and it was a big band full of non-music majors. And so basically Joshua Redman was in the band actually, and Joshua was playing, and Joshua sounded great, of course. But most of the people in the band were not music majors, and they were studying law or like Joshua was, and they were not necessarily great musicians, and so the band was not that great, And Joe Henderson was their special guest, and he came in, and the bass player had a pink electric bass, and they were trying to play some Joe Henderson tunes. It was like he looked like he should have been playing with Duran Duran or something like that, But Joe Henderson just came in and just wow, like it was incredible how he was able to just like take, I guess it's just the experience, but it was also the way where he put the beat and the confidence he had with the beat, but he could just like bam, and
talk about polyrhythm, by the way.
Yeah. Joe Henderson, yeah, I'm a huge fan. Did you ever meet him?
I did not. I did not meet him. And wait a minute, he was born in Ohio, right?
Yeah, he's from Ohio. Is it?
I'm supposed to just.
Is there a Lima, Ohio? Is there a Lima?
Yeah, that sounds right.
Yeah, that rings a bell in my head. I had a couple of moments where like I was at a jazz festival and he knew I was a tenor player, and he could tell by the way I looked at him, probably like, the way that
like wiping the drool away.
Yeah, just like. But and one time I was in an elevator with him, and he was just like, it was North Sea. You'd get those kind of crazy little moments things like that would happen at North Sea because it was all like so close together, and just all these musicians in the same hotel, like in the same 3 days, just jam packed. And but yeah, he was pretty special. I love Joe Henderson.
Well, man,
that song from my the Sidewinder solo. Sidewinder solo. That's pretty amazing.
Man, we could keep talking because
I know, yeah.
We could just keep going and going.
I gotta eat dinner, actually. Yeah, we could go forever. Music is vast and limitless, and we could just go forever. I know. It's a good thing I don't have any wine or something, because then I'd just be like, yeah. Just go forever.
but definitely, I'm gonna have to have you back sometime, maybe in a few months or something, because I feel like we're just kind of scratching the surface. I think we're getting somewhere, especially with this polyrhythmic kind of conversation and talking about feel and stuff. I think that's a conversation that needs to be had more often,
Mm-hmm.
and I think is a conversation that students need to hear
Mm-hmm.
more often.
Yeah, yeah.
And so I was into that, and I'm the whole conversation, man. It's just great reconnecting with you, and thanks for
Likewise.
doing the interview. And
Great. Is it going to be up?
uh,
Will you send me a link or something?
I will.
Okay.
I
Cool.
will, and I'll want you to to help to promote it by posting
Yeah,
to social.
sure.
Yep.
Sure.
So,
Absolutely. Super. Well, thanks. Thanks, Ron. Thank you, man.
all right, all right.
Great.
Well, God bless you, and you be safe, and look forward to talking to you again soon.
Likewise. Likewise. Okay. Take care. Bye-bye.
All right, man. All right, bye.
Bye.